Our goal this season has been to keep our eyes on the prize, to keep moving forward toward the start line at Leadville in spite of a situation that makes us feel like we're sometimes standing still. But this episode is going to take a little detour from that idea. We're going to look the cancellation monster squarely in the eye and see who blinks.
Yeah, so excuse us if we add to what has already been a stressful Leadville run-up for many of you. And may we suggest you lean on our title sponsor while you listen to this episode, Floyd's of Leadville, because for this episode, a little relax and recovery may be in order right after you finish listening.
or while. It's a little CBD post-podcast or during podcast. The fact is, after we recorded, I went straight for my Floyd Supply hottie. I mean, we're not going to scare you with our content, but there's a lot to think about here. And some CBD drops or capsules could be just the thing for taking off the edge after listening to everything we're going to be covering.
Hear, hear. During these uncertain times, as people are saying, I am certainly glad I have had Floyd's of Leadville CBD products. There's no better way for me to lose sleep, Fatty, than to have a head full of crazy thoughts and concerns. When the brain is busy and I'm trying to go to sleep, it's Floyd's to the rescue. Be sure to check out Floyd's of Leadville, our presenting sponsor for 2 seasons in a row now, at floydsofleadville.com and use the code FATTY at checkout for a 15% discount on all your orders.
And big thanks to Floyd's of Leadville for sponsoring the show.
3, 2, 1.
Leadville, the podcast for the 100-mile mountain bike race presented by Floyd's of Leadville. It is season 3, episode 7 of the show that breaks down, builds you up, gets you ready, and freaks you out for the highest and hardest one-day mountain bike race in the country. I am Michael Houghton. They call me Hottie.
And I'm Eldon Nelson. They call me Fatty. In this episode, we take an in-depth look at the question of staging the Leadville Trail 100 this summer. Our view will be through 3 lenses: health, racer, and race promoter. And amazingly, we found one person who can wear all 3 of those hats. His name's Kevin Brooks. He is the COO of Swedish Hospital in Seattle. He is a 2018 finisher at Leadville, and he puts on running races in the Western United States. This is going to be a great show, tough and definitely substantial.
Indeed. And so, to keep things on time, let's get straight to our question of the week, and we'll make it a quickie. Over on our Slack workspace, which you'll find in a link at the Leadville100podcast.com website, Jeff asks, what are some good techniques to gather pace lines together on the power line to pipeline section?
That is such a good question, Jeff. And there are some surprisingly effective and easy tricks to build a good working pace line in several places on the course, not just on that power line to pipeline. First, start small, start easy. If you have to kill yourself to get to a group ahead of you, you are not helping yourself. Instead, look behind you and work with someone who is close behind you. Drift back a little bit, work together. That way you both will have enough energy to work, and the person you chase down won't have to drag you for a while. Second, set the rules. Tell the person or small group you are working with that something that you can get out quick and something that you already know that you're going to say. Something like 10-second pulls and then fade left. That has worked for me multiple times. People get that and they understand it. And then finally, don't be afraid to let someone go. Some people are going to attack from the front. They can't help themselves, but you don't want them as part of your group. That's 3 easy rules, and the strategy works, at least on the paved sections and on the bumpy, on the wide paved or a wide dirt road on Hagerman's.
And I'll add to that, look for tandems. You probably won't find a lot of them, but if you do get lucky to find one, and I have, I think twice, in fact, The tandems really roll those paved sections nicely, and they can be a big help. And by the way, there's an opportunity to pace line between Pipeline and Twin Lakes. Now, this is a tricky section because people are stopping at Pipeline, or some of them do, for a feed. So gathering a group coming out of the Pipeline section headed towards the single track section can be tricky, but very useful. So again, look for people in that Pipeline area as you're coming through it and headed towards the Twin Lakes section.
Hadi, before we jump into the meat of the show, I am going to blow your mind with our DNA cycling spot.
Are you going to promote some kind of crazy cycling kit here?
No, that's actually behind us now. The pre-order is done. In fact, I'm not going to be talking about a cycling kit at all. In fact, I'm not even going to be promoting DNA cycling in the DNA cycling promo spot. Instead, I want to tell our listeners to go and check out threadandspoke.com, which is a sister site to DNA. There, you're going to find some of the most awesome t-shirts, bike-themed t-shirts, hoodies, hats, and posters you're ever going to see.
Okay, Thread and Spoke. I've been there before, and you are right. There are hundreds of great bike t-shirt designs there.
Literally hundreds. And you can get most of their shirt designs in either gender, a huge selection of colors, and any size. That's because they print them to order. When you order one, they make that shirt. And it's close to where I live. I've actually watched their little machine as they print out individual shirts. So they're never out of stock.
That's for sure. You could surf for bike t-shirt and hoodie designs for hours there.
Yeah, you could and you should. Check them out at threadandspoke.com. And thanks to DNA Cycling and Thread and Spoke for sponsoring the show.
Like we said in the open, we have a unique guest on this show, someone who can bring multiple perspectives to the question of whether to hold the Leadville Trail 100.
Yeah, before we jump into that interview, I want to pull back the curtain on this episode of the show. It started with a premise and a question we wanted to center this episode of the show around. The premise part was simple. Assume that the Leadville 100 is going to happen in 2020. The question part was a little trickier. How do we adapt the race, the racers, the crew, the volunteers, and the rules to make this race as safe as possible? So I reached out to Lifetime with that question. It just worded like that. And they replied saying, generally, this isn't a quote because this wasn't on record, that basically right now they're not in a place where they can join in that kind of conversation, which is fine. That's a fair position. So we, of course, replied saying, anytime they would like to talk to the race's most passionate fans, us, we're right there for them.
Yeah, we are constantly reaching out to Lifetime on this topic and many others, and they have a standing offer to come on this show or use this show to get a message out. They're facing tough times right now, though. Their fitness centers have been hurting by the shutdown, and the other big part of who they are, the race series, has already had to postpone events. So while the communication from Lifetime has not been daily, we do understand. Like a lot of businesses, they are facing a situation that will deeply affect their future.
Yeah, but it's still an important question and premise. And as it turns out, I know a guy, Kevin Brooks, who I went ahead and asked that question too. So little background on Kevin. Years ago, he and I met when he was promoting a new half marathon in my area to raise money to help locals with their financial burdens as they fought cancer. It was a very practical fundraiser with a focus on community. He wasn't trying to cure cancer. He was just trying to help people with cancer pay their bills. The race and others like it he's done since then have been huge successes, partially because Kevin has a big heart and wants to do good in the world, and partially because he is really smart and practical. He brings a lot of talent and a lot of experience to pretty much everything he does. So nowadays, Kevin is the COO, Chief Operating Officer of the largest hospital in Seattle. He's also still involved in race promotion and has been to or raced every event in the Leadville series. So I brought that exact premise and question to him because I feel he might be, in fact, uniquely qualified to answer. And we didn't really get the episode that I expected. I thought we got something, though, that was more important than that.
With that said, here's an interview that looks at the tough choices ahead for the city of Leadville, Lifetime, and us racers.
Kevin Brooks, thanks so much for joining us for what I am expecting to be a very interesting conversation.
Thanks, Eldon. I'm happy to be here.
So you have what I think is probably a uniquely qualified perspective. You have experienced all the Leadville races. You've crewed for your wife, who successfully, I should say, raced the Leadwoman in 2018. Amazing accomplishment. You've personally raced and finished the Leadville 100. You are an experienced and successful race promoter yourself, and you are the COO of a hospital in a large city that has been pretty successfully, I would say, battling the pandemic. Have I missed anything?
No, I think you got it spot on.
That is a lot. So before really what I want to talk with you tonight about is, as someone who loves races, who promotes races, who also really understands the logistics and infrastructure behind a pandemic and a hospital and health in a community, we want to find out, should we be doing the Leadville race this year? And if so, how?
Yeah.
So first, I mean, sort of give us a little bit of history. What have you been going through for the last few months, just to give us a sense of what is COVID-19 like in a major metropolitan, Seattle hospital?
I'll start by saying early on it was very scary. As we had our first cases in the Seattle metro area start to spread. It started in skilled nursing facilities with elderly folks. And so they already had compromised health condition. It spread rapidly through that. And then it spread throughout the community. And my team at Swedish is an amazing team. The leadership team, and of course, our nursing, our physicians, our diagnostic and ancillary, our EVS, all these people, we came together like I've never seen us come together. And we organized and we created spaces and alternate sites of care. And the level of teamwork was special. I would even say magical. Everyone was focused on just taking care of these patients. And we were anticipating a surge. And I would say early on, there was a little bit of a surge that occurred. And then I'm super proud of the state of Washington and of Seattle, because quickly we implemented best practices in public health, and Governor Inslee instituted social distancing. I mean, we shut the city down. All of a sudden, my commute went from being 30 minutes to 12 minutes. That part was a nice trade-off. But of course, I'm just proud of our community. And I would say the slope of our curve greatly flattened. And now we're on the backside of that curve. And who knows if it cycles again. But I'll pause there and let you probe a little deeper. But it's very scary to look at taking surgical areas and vacating them to treat patients and creating standards of care of, okay, we have an ICU nurse, and typically that's a 1-to-1 ratio, one nurse to one patient. And what if we had to go to 1-to-4? What if we had to go to 1-to-10? What would that mean? We set up councils for ethics on decision-making of triage. Who do we treat and what resources do we apply to that treatment? And our physicians were absolute pros during all of that. And then I just got to make this one comment. It is true that our nurses and our physicians deserve a ton of credit, but there are so many people on the back end that people don't recognize as much. And that is the environmental services techs, the dietitians, the supply chain folks. They put themselves in just as much risk, and they are heroes as well.
Kevin, you've not only worked at a large metropolitan hospital like Swedish, and Swedish is not only a hospital, there's a large number of hospitals. It's a major name up in the Seattle area. But you've also worked at smaller places, smaller hospitals, and smaller communities. Describe to us the difference as far as management is concerned. Now, obviously, in a smaller community, you're probably going to have fewer cases. But what are the differences between a large institution, hospital, or system of hospitals like what you see in Seattle and something in a smaller community? What are the differences in management style there?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, there's much more sophistication and resources in a condensed metropolitan area. I have had in my career the chance to visit very rural emergency hospitals, critical access hospitals is the technical term, throughout Montana. And then, of course, as you finish the Leadville 100 and you crest the hill to go towards the finish line, that is St. Vincent Hospital. That is the hospital in Leadville. And the reason we say emergency room instead of emergency department is those places, when you walk into them, it is literally a room. And the level, these folks are incredible at being general practitioners, but they are not geared nor equipped with the sophistication of a quaternary or tertiary center that you get in large cities. And not only that, but the resources in personal protection equipment and the specialization of care is nowhere near to the level in those rural communities that you need to service COVID patients in particular.
So taking that, the hospital and extending it out to the community, if someone in Leadville does get COVID-19, what do they do?
So I don't want to speak for that hospital administrator or that medical staff there, but most likely it's a treat and transfer. They're going to present at the ER, and they'll probably do a quick test and determine, and turnaround time for in Leadville for a test. My guess is it's probably a day. But most likely they're just going to treat and transfer. They're going to send that patient to Denver. And, Leadville's, I don't know, what is the population? I'm trying to remember the science, like 2,500 people or so.
Yeah, around 3,000.
And I guarantee you that St. Vincent Hospital is full of amazing people and incredible clinicians. But they would not have the supplies, specialization of equipment to treat these patients. I doubt they even have a ventilator. They may have one or two, but they would certainly not be able to handle the level of sophistication required.
Okay. So, I mean, what you're getting to is anyone in Leadville, resident or visitor, who actually starts developing COVID symptoms, they're getting out of Leadville in short order. And so does altitude play any part in that, or is, COVID-19 symptoms?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a doctor, but we do know it's largely a respiratory disease. And so, I mean, it's so funny you say that, Eldon, because as you reflect on it, what do you notice the first time you walk up a set of stairs when you're in Leadville? On your first few days,
fall down.
Yeah, you can't breathe. And yet, what is one of the first indicators of COVID? Do you find shortness of breath? So I hadn't made that connection, but surely I can't imagine the altitude is beneficial when you're already grasping for air.
Yeah. So you wear a lot of hats, and that is one of the reasons we wanted to talk with you. You're a race promoter. You're a fan of the race. You're a seasoned administrator. I want you to keep as many of these hats on as possible for this conversation, but let us know anytime that you need to say, I'm right now, I'm not talking as a professional at Swedish. I'm talking just as, a fan or as a promoter, but, let's sort of start with as many hats as you can at a time. Okay. So, you might have to take this first one off right for the first big question, but it's the one that's on our minds. Should there be a Leadville 100 in 2020?
So let me just kind of lay this out. I'm a co-founder and co-owner of the Revel Race Series. We produce 6 marathons in the western half of the United States, many Boston qualifiers. We produce the Portland Marathon, and we've already canceled 2 of our events. So I think that answers the question. And and I'll walk through the ramifications for me and my team. But at the end of the day, we know we're experiencing a global pandemic. We are just a few months into this. And we may look back at this in 5 years and Monday morning quarterback this and say, oh my gosh, that was such a huge overreaction. And I actually hope that's the case, because the alternative is we underreacted, thousands of people died, and we mismanaged big time. And so to me, we are operating in a place of such ignorance in terms of how this disease spreads. I mean, we know it's a couple orders of magnitude more contagious than the flu. The mortality rate is still being determined, but right now it seems like it's a higher mortality rate. And so why would we mess around with that? So to answer your question, even though it is painful because it includes people's jobs, even though it wipes out hours and hours of training, there is no question the Leadville 100 should not happen, in my opinion, this year.
So I want to push back because I'm still registered. And I mean, I had opportunities to defer or get a refund. And I said, no, I am in. It's right now when we're recording toward the last few days in April, if that's worth saying. The Leadville 100 is not until August 15th. That's still months away. Isn't it too early to say it just shouldn't happen?
I think that's fair. And if I was Leadville, I wouldn't make that decision today. And I try to be fair in all of this. There also is as a race promoter, there's also a couple of things to consider. We canceled the race and people were critical of us because they would say things like, you have tons of lead time. But there are lots of things people don't think about. We order shirts and medals and food and buses and all of these things months in advance. And there comes a critical point where you got to fish or cut bait, or else you're just going to lose everything. Like the worst thing that could happen, because in our position, we wanted to make sure we could provide a refund or at least a deferment. And so we did that. And so I guess from my perspective, you could wait a little bit. If I was the Leadville 100, my guess is not much is going to change, or not enough will change, because what you really need to host it is rapid testing, not just for whether you have it, but do you also have the antibodies? And even then, just think about Leadville, this iconic American town that seems to survive no matter what. It has what is it Ken says, the grit, guts, and determination to survive, kind of no matter what.
Guts and determination.
Yeah, there you go. And they seem to make it. And it's also not the most wealthy town. And we know that in pandemics, they are brutal on those who are less fortunate or live in poverty or the elderly and may not have the resources to fight the pandemic. So I think it is somewhat perhaps selfish of us to put our desire to spend 12 hours on a bike and prove and I love Leadville. I mean, I love events. I own them. I do events every year. I mean, I'm devastated over all of this. But we have to love Leadville enough not to do it. That's the bottom line. We have to love the city. We have to love the citizens, and even recognizing that this pain it's going to be painful for them. A lot of people make their whole year probably based off of, a few weekends, and here it's probably not going to happen. And I think that's tough. It's tragic. It's heartbreaking. And, but it's probably the right call.
Rider up, Leadville, 100 miles down. Let's let him hear it. That's right. That is rider 352, Felipe Castro.
So one way to keep yourself looking forward and optimistic is build a new bike. And that's exactly the thing that I'm doing. It's a mountain bike, a Niner. And as you might expect, it is a hardtail. It is the Niner Air 9 RDO. But apart from that, there is a lot of uncertainty surrounding this build, which is fun. The main part of it's going to be single speed or geared.
Well, either way, we know it will be dressed up with Shimano XTR components. But whether geared or not, Fatty, you have an interesting choice to make within the XTR lineup, specifically with brake levers and shifter, should you choose. See, XTR shift and brake levers now come with an option called iSpec EV. On the shift lever, for instance, riders get a wider range of adjustments with this iSpec EV, including increased lever slide range and a 60-degree rotational angle. Pretty cool. So you can really dial in how your fingers and thumbs touch those levers. Only Shimano would think of this. And when you are spending hours on the bike in the Leadville Trail 100, just where your fingers and thumbs, your thumbs and fingers touch those levers, those little things like that, they show up big time by the time you reach the finish line.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to trying that out. And I'm going to be combing over all the XTR spec sheets as I put my final build together. And I'm super excited for that episode of this show. Meanwhile, go to bike.shimano.com for more information on this. And we're also going to make sure to have a link in show notes for this episode at leadville100podcast.com. Now, back to our interview with Kevin Brooks. And as we rejoin, Kevin has his race promoter's hat on.
Kevin, of the races that you promote, were those postponements you did, or were they full-on cancellations? And how far in advance did you guys make that decision?
They're full-on cancellations. So what we did is, in this case, Revel, we canceled. We offered deferments, and then the other thing we did is we allowed, and this is a growing trend, other people are doing this now, but we allowed people to do it virtually. So not the course per se, but hey, just go ride 100 miles that day or go run a marathon distance that day, post your time, and we'll send you the t-shirt. Because in that case, we actually had ordered t-shirts and medals from Mount Charleston, which is an event in Las Vegas. And so they'll get a t-shirt and a medal. And actually, when you think about it, it's kind of a collector's edition, right? I mean, it's unlikely to happen again. And so that'll be a special year for those who chose to virtually do it. Or they could do it on their own in the sense of if they wanted to go run that course solo on a particular day, that's great, fine. So that's how we've done it. And it's been interesting to other people just cancel. And I get that. The bottom line is there is no right way to do this. There is no easy way to do this. And there are stakeholders on both sides that get hurt. The race promoters themselves, I mean, just the event industry. Look at South by Southwest. They laid off half. Was it a third? I can't remember the exact number. A significant number of their staff. We have a staff of 9. We've had to lay off 2. And we'll be watching our finances closely. And furloughs are not out of the question for race companies. And then think of the downstream effect with companies that make medals and shirts and vendors. I mean, it's huge.
Kevin, how far in advance did you make those cancellations?
In this case, it was only about a month and a half in advance.
Well, that's been I think the positioning with the Leadville 100 too, Fatty, is that I think they're probably looking at 4 weeks to a month and a half when they'll make their final decision on their particular events. Like they have qualifiers that they have to decide on, and of course the Big E too, or the Big E's. I mean, they only have. I mean, Kevin, as you well know, Leadville Lifetime has a lot on their plate with this decision. I mean, if they cancel the LT100 mountain bike race, you're pretty much guaranteeing the run's going to be gone then too. And Leadman, Leadwoman, those will all be gone. And those are just, one decision means 4 for them, probably. Silver Rush will likely be gone. The stage race, I mean, all that stuff will just get wiped out for them. And in one clean decision.
Yep. The marathons. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I don't, if ever there was a time to have some empathy for race promoters, now is the time. I mean, the decision-making process, I can tell you, our team agonized, like days and days of conversation and, texting, emails, phone at night. They're not loving this at all. And they want nothing more than to put this event on. This is what they live for. And actually, in advance of this, interview, I went to the website and you look at the staff that lives in Leadville, and I've met some of those people, in the store as you're buying gear, and amazing people. And, this impacts their lives.
Yeah, Fatty, and Kevin, I went to probably what was the last big event, off-road event of the spring, of the season so far. It was actually late winter, and that was the Mid-South, formerly known as the Land Run 100. I didn't race. I went and crewed. I went and stayed with a buddy when I crewed. And there was a lot of hand-wringing at that event. In fact, it came down to the last couple of days of whether or not it was going to get pulled off. And in the end, the local officials green-lighted it and said, go ahead. I think at the time, Oklahoma had not had an infection. I'm not 100% on that. They may have had 1 or 2, or there may have been none. I can't remember for sure. But it came down to the last second. And post-race, there was a lot of questioning about whether or not that race should have been pulled off. For the folks who attended, some of those people got the finger wag as well from a distance over Facebook and what have you. So it was a very, very tough call, even in those stages before, anything had really broken out. But I bring all that up Kevin, I suppose from a race promoter standpoint, you look at the racers, right? These are healthy people. If they get exposed to the virus, are they probably going to get over it? Yeah, this is the group set that is probably going to survive it. That's not the real issue, is it? It's what these racers are bringing to a community, and they could be carrying, and they could spread. Is that the supreme risk here?
So I'm gonna bring up two things. I'm gonna challenge you on the first a little bit, but I'll address your second point first, and that is, you're absolutely right. We are all vectors of this contagion, meaning we're all carriers. And as we know, it's been well documented, people can be asymptomatic for they may never even feel any symptoms. However, I want to be careful. It's not like I've spent hours in our intensive care units, but I've spent some time in there, and I've been up there with our nurses and our intensivists. And as I walked the halls, because you keep hearing this is just for old people or people who have comorbidities, and I can tell you that's not the case at all. As I walked the halls, I saw people my age with 3 kids. I'm 43 for the record. Sorry, I'm 42, and they were fairly young, middle-aged folks. And now we have data coming out showing that people may be asymptomatic, but they get a stroke. So I'll just, that's true. But I also do think your second point is probably the more prescient one, which is that we bring this stuff to the communities, and we need to love these communities enough to be sympathetic and cautious, and we need to do them right.
So the question then becomes, who has the responsibility and or right to draw the line, to say, we're not going to be doing it this year? Obviously, Lifetime is one of the parties that can say no. Who else? Is it a city thing, a state thing? Who could or should be saying this can't happen?
Any and all of those. And I think in terms of decision rights, it probably goes the governor down to the municipality, and then of course the actual event owner. The city of Leadville, I don't know the decision rights for Colorado per se, but that's generally how it works. And I think the city of Leadville is probably working closely with the officials at Lifetime to determine that. I mean, we worked with people in Las Vegas in the Department of Health to figure out if we should keep the Mount Charleston Marathon, which is one of the biggest qualifiers for the Boston Marathon. I mean, people come from all over the country because it's one of the fastest courses, and that's a tough decision to make. So I definitely that local officials, political and Department of Health, get involved in that.
Okay. So,
and actually, sorry, Eldon, I do think this is, I think it's important. I don't know the administrator of that hospital, and I don't know what he or she would say, but he or she should definitely be weighing in and saying, look, people come to Leadville for 7 days, sometimes 10 days to acclimate. And as we know, the lead time to become symptomatic is 3 to 5 days. And so it would not be out of the realm of possibility to think they could overrun that ER in the course of a few short days if there was even a small outbreak. I mean, as we've said, that hospital, I think it has 8 staffed beds, an ER. And I don't want to speak for him or her, but man, I'll tell you what, if I was in their shoes, that would be a precarious place to be in.
Yeah. And the reality is that when you look at the overlap between the Leadville 100 run and the Leadville 100 mountain bike race, and of course there's the people who are doing both, and all the volunteers, all the staff from Lifetime who comes in, all the volunteers, there are probably at some point at least 6,000 visitors in a 3,000 person town. And we're close together, right? Anyone who has ever, and this is one of the things I love about the race, walking up and down the street, going into the shops, hanging out, I'm wearing my Periodic Brewery jacket right now. I love everything about this town. But, that's something prior to right now while we're recording, I had not thought that much about. That if I love this place, am I willing to forego a year of the race? So far, the answer is no. I am still registered. So let's sort of set that part of this conversation, at least to the side for a moment, because I want you to sort of have your primary hat for a little while be your race promoter hat, the person who's done the race before and has observed the race a number of times. Let's start from the premise that this race is going to happen. Okay, we're going to do the Leadville 100 this year. What are the things that need to happen in order for that to be in the best possible experience? I mean, I can think of some of the obvious easy ones that we need to have cheap, highly available testing. There needs to be, well, it would be nice if there were a working therapeutic medicine. I don't think it's even possible for us to talk about vaccine until 2021. But what are the reasonable things that a race promoter can do to make this race safe for the community, safe for the racers?
Okay, so real quick, let me just throw this caveat in there too. As I'm thinking as a participant, and I remember sitting in my wife, as you said, did Leadwoman, and I remember as she came down Hope Pass, and we were sitting in, I think is it Winfield? I can't remember the name of the little aid station there, and it's a special moment, right? You have people on top of each other, just caring for each other, and or I go back to this time when I did the Crush and the Tusher, and I was coming up the Col de Crush, and I ran out of water, like totally ran out of water, and this dude gave me his water bottle, and he was half empty, and I didn't care at all. I didn't even think twice drinking from this guy's water bottle, for right or for wrong, right? I mean, from an infectious disease perspective, clearly that's wrong, but in the moment, oh my gosh, I did not care, right? So then, okay, how do we mitigate for those factors as race promoters? And this is where kind of creativity is our superpower as humans. It's what we do. We figure things out. And I have no question over time, even if this is with us next year, race promoters will figure this out. We'll figure out using technology or other things, ways to hold events. And, even, okay, let's say they're going to do it. I've thought about this. Okay, so first off, the very thing we love. I mean, what does Leadville 100 do? They have that picture, that aerial view of the start that goes back blocks, and we all sit there, and that's such a cool moment, right? And so you can't have that clearly. So then maybe the only thing you do is like a time trial over the course of days. So could you set up people and you have, so for 5 days, you're just going to send people off every, 2 minutes, whatever it is, one by one. But you'd have to have a no aid stations or minimal, totally self-supported,
or one crew person per racer. And you don't touch or interact with anyone but that, and no volunteer aid station, right?
Correct. And I think you'd have to you go to the grocery store and they mark out 6 feet. You'd probably have to mark out, this is, you can't get this close. Or
yeah, you don't have Twin Lakes Dam. You have the entire road from Twin Lakes Dam all the way up to what is known as Coach's Corner, where Coach, and I'm blanking on his last name, but the guy who sits in his lawn chair yelling for everyone, all the way to the single track, basically, right? That's Twin Lakes Dam. Every 6 feet, one person.
You're right. But even then, Eldon, we all know that part of what makes Leadville special is it's the meals before. It's the meals after. It's the finish line. It's the crossing the finish line with the crowds cheering you on.
It's Ken before.
It's the hug from it's the hug from Mara Lee. Is that her name, right? As you finish all of that, and what's amazing with that is we are disgusting as we cross that line, and she hugs us. But But that's all part of the mystique, the legend, everything that encapsulate what Leadville really is. If it's really just
the wall of noise, the crush of people, Twin Lakes Dam,
exactly.
The pre-race event, right, where we get revved up to 11, and we are sitting in the gym, super close to each other, and it's intense and it's hot, and we're already all sweating, right? And we're for sure breathing used air. I mean, all of that, we got to rethink it, right? I don't know what the answer is, but we have to think of those pieces.
Like, is that Leadville? I don't know, right? It seems to me like I look back at my memories of Leadville, and my greatest moments were really with humans. And so I don't know. And there is no right or wrong here. Let me be clear. And I may sound like I have a strong opinion. The reality is, I get it. I mean, this is tough. But I don't know if there's a way this year in such a short amount of time to actually pull this off. I remember there was the year I did it. Was it Garmin? I can't remember. Garmin and Cinch. I can't remember who it was. They were doing some type of tracking system. And so I wonder, and it's GPS, but it was more refined. I wonder if there's a way to do that. So you could do kind of maybe everybody has 3 weeks, but even then you still have to present in the city of Leadville. And at that point, you're still a vector. You're still bringing it to the town.
Right. Just not all at once.
Yeah.
And is that any better? I don't know.
I don't know either. And it's interesting because in preparation for this, I kind of was reviewing some things and refreshing my memory. And as you look at the course profile, it's somewhat reminiscent of some of these websites I see, and we track our own data of cases, of COVID cases, right? So part of me wonders, okay, so we've summited here in Seattle, the Carter Summit. We're on the backside. We're probably going to get a sugar loaf as we create our social distancing, and then there's this flattening period, right? What we have to avoid is Columbine. We have to, from a COVID perspective, we have to avoid this like explosive surge. And yet it's really hard. Like, let me just give you an example. In Seattle, tomorrow, I'm supposed to go to a Rage Against the Machine concert with my son. We're huge fans, but that would create a Columbine experience. And I think holding Leadville would be a catastrophic experience for the town.
Oh, honestly, I'm feeling gut punched right now. I hear you, and I want to, but I want to find a way to thread that needle. The question is it responsible, not just right for myself, but right for the people around me, for the people of Leadville, and for all of the families, all the crew, everyone.
Despite all that is going on, Envy remains on a roll. In the middle of all this chaos, they have rolled out a new wheel series, the Foundation series, featuring 2 road wheel sets, and the AM30 series, a dual mountain bike set. You've heard us talk about the mountain wheels here.
Well, if you want to hear how the engineers got a product that meets Envy standards into a package that comes in at almost $1,000 less, check out the Envy podcast. Yeah, they've been busy with that too, putting out some new shows. And one of them focuses on that Foundation series. It's really good, in-depth stuff on the carbon layup and spoke hole drillings and yaw angle performance. Really mind-blowing stuff that's really worth listening to.
We love Envy's products and their absolute madness for making super techie, super cool stuff. Their podcast is on all the platforms you might imagine, including their website, envy.com. That's ENVE.com. Back to our discussion and a big question. What could signal to Leadville organizers that it is safe to have a race? Is there any possibility that we could get to August and we're in the clear and there could be a safe Leadville and have it look pretty much normal?
I'll go back to the beginning of this conversation in the sense that maybe. I think one of the challenges, it goes back to, we are so ignorant. And is it worth the roll of the dice? Again, I want to know what we're going to say about this in 3 to 5 years. So is it worth the risk? Is it worth the risk? And I totally get it. We have a lot to lose by not doing it. But we probably have more to lose by doing it. And
well, let me put it another way here. I probably didn't phrase it properly. Let's say we get some indicators like the major sports are talking about trying to get things moving again, right? And maybe not with fans in place right away. But if we got to July and they're playing baseball, for instance, with no fans or limited fans, what kind of indicator is that to a race promoter? Does that mean, okay, are we feeling it here? Are we moving forward, or do we still not know?
Certainly, I think there are signals that we need to be sensitive to along our path to a decision. And every signal has value. However, as we open up and we start to actually congregate in mass gatherings and so on and so forth, it feels like big events should be the last thing that open up, the very, very last, right? Because it is it has the greatest risk for spread. So to your point, Hadi, I think read the signs, listen to the signals, and make a call. I don't think they need to make the decision right now. But again, I go back to the ignorance side. It would just be tragic if we get on the other side and realize, oh my gosh, we brought in 6,000 people, of which 300 had COVID, and with an R0 spread of 2 to 3, we just all of a sudden we're at 2,000 people. Half the town has got COVID now, right? So
back up for a second. Tell me what that R0 spread stuff is. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. So R0 is, so if you get infected, Eldon, how many people get sick from you? So the flu is like 1.3. So if you get sick, 1.3 people get sick from the flu. With COVID, the current numbers are showing anywhere from 2 to 4. So it is again, orders of magnitude difference that you're going to get other people sick. So I think, Hadi, that's the question, is we're just operating from such a place of ignorance. We still don't know, and we don't understand this disease. So I think we just wait, but I'm not going to fault anybody. Like if the promoters, then the city want to take the risk, it's a calculated risk. They're smart people, they're caring people, and they're going to make the best decision with the information they have. And I'm not going to second guess them per se. I think it'll be a learning experience and we'll look back. I would just caution, is it worth it? Like, is it really worth it?
So are there signposts that you would find reassuring to the extent that you would say that you would reverse that line of thinking, where you would say, the slope of the curve has decreased so much, or there is good promise of therapeutics, or there is something else? I'm looking for a thread of hope here, Kevin. That's all.
Yeah, no, I think we all are. My God, I would love nothing more than for this to happen. And to your point, clearly better testing. Well, it is better. I can tell you it is better. Early on, testing was a complete disaster in this country, and it is getting better. So testing will help. We're not going to have a vaccine by then. I mean, that's almost a sure thing. There are some treatments that are interesting that are coming out, but even then, treatments only get you so far. And let's say we did find a drug that does help with this. Immediately it will become scarce. The supply chain in healthcare is not built to handle pandemics. So I would love to say there are some signals that could indicate to us that it is worth doing this. And I may be ignorant on that, but as I look forward and what's around the corner, I don't see anything that would suggest we could pull this off.
Okay. I mean, that's pretty definitive right there. So let's look to the future. You are a race promoter. You're someone who loves races, and you're also obviously, very thoughtful and considering about communities and their well-being. So what does the future of racing look like, at least short term? Hopefully 5 years from now, everything can go back to normal. We can be big crowds and be handing bottles to each other, to folks we've never met, all of that. But for the next, until we have a vaccine, what does racing look like? So, for the year 2021, what am I going to be doing for my races?
Oh, 2021 is interesting. 2020 to 2021, I hope we start to get better testing. I hope we have some glimmers of hope towards a vaccine. But for 2020, like my own son is scheduled to race in nationals in cross country mountain biking and enduro, and he
yeah, I've raced with your son.
The kid's been training. I'm so proud of him. Like he's given himself to this. And so it breaks my heart to think but he's still going like it's going to happen. And it's in Winter Park in Colorado, but who knows, right? And so what I keep saying is, why do we do these races? We do it largely, for everyone it's a little different, but the variables are, if you were to do a Venn diagram, there's some overlap for all of us. For some of it's our health. For some of us, it's a sense of adventure. For some of us, it's social. And for all of us, it's a component of all of that. And so, and there is this kind of this competitiveness with other people as well as with ourselves. I think, while maybe not the same, it is still meaningful to get out and go for a ride, to go for a run, to get with loved ones who you theoretically don't have COVID, and go for a ride or a run. I mean, I think that's still meaningful. And that's what I think racing becomes. And then I go back to what I said earlier. Creativity is the superpower of humans. We will find a way, both medically and or through our creativity in managing and hosting events, to do something pretty special. I can tell you our company is working on some things. I know lots of people are, but we're not going to let this stop us. It'll never stop the human spirit. We're going to figure out a way to do this. It may look a little different for the next few years, but we're going to find a way to make it a special, meaningful experience for everyone.
And just from the sort of the hedgy way that you said your company is working on stuff, are we talking about just small group racing? Are we talking about something else, or is that something for another conversation, another time?
So it's probably for a conversation another time. Not that anything's super top secret. We're just in development and trying to figure out our own how we can do this. It definitely involves some technology, but even Strava. Just look at Strava. Go get your segment PR. You know what I mean? Like work on some things like that, and race yourself or race some buddies on Strava.
I was just going to say that's actually Melissa, my stepdaughter, who is also a very strong racer, who was looking forward to having a career that would essentially take her into the pros this year. And instead, she's just riding out by herself. So she's given herself over to what she's calling Strava Thursdays. Every Thursday, she goes QOM hunting. She is going and finding some strong, someone who is a known name in the racing community, and is hitting it hard and taking a QOM. We find ways to keep the fire burning. I think that's kind of what you're saying, and I totally agree.
Yeah, we can keep, and I love the way you framed that. We can keep the fire burning. It may not be the same intensity we all love, nor does it have the kind of esprit de corps or camaraderie we experience when we're actually out with friends and family and people we don't know, strangers. It's like this human spirit, right? It just connects us all. So some of that, a lot of that would be lacking, but all the other components are there. And certainly our own health at a time of, we're going through a public health crisis. Now is a time to focus on our health and keep training, keep riding, keep running, keep lifting. All of those things are still just as important as ever.
Well, I can live up to that. I think I can do that, Fatty. Yeah. Keep on. Now, Kevin, you came on the Leadville show, so we can't let you off the hook here. You raced in 2018. How did you do? And will we see you at the Leadville start line in the future?
Oh man, you are putting me on the spot. I finished in 2018 at 11:47, so I earned my belt buckle, and for that, I am proud. And my wife was with me. She was actually just a few minutes behind me. And then she did Leadwoman the next year, and I was happy enough to pace her, and she actually beat my time. So the question is, are we going to be back? I think my wife and I will be back.
Well, you'll be back with your son.
Yeah.
I mean, he's going to be podium.
Yeah. My son is a beast. But yes, I think Leadville is in our future.
Well, Kevin, this has been, I'm going to be completely honest, a hard and in some ways a a difficult conversation, one that I didn't necessarily hope for for where they went, but that's what makes for good conversation sometimes. Lots of food for thought. Who knows where I'm going to wind up on this, but you've certainly given me things to think about. I'm sure our listeners plenty to think about. Hadi, I don't know, where do we go from here?
We keep doing shows. We promised that we're going to keep doing shows. We are going to move ahead like we're getting folks ready for the Leadville 100. But I think, as we do these shows, we're going to remind ourselves and remind our audience that Leadville's not a definite. It doesn't have to be a definite. You can choose not to race. The race may very well make that decision for you. Either way, like Kevin just said, keep moving forward. Keep your goals in mind. Keep pushing your body. Keep pushing yourself as if something is out there for you, because there probably is. If it's not Leadville, it'll be something else.
Yep. And this conversation is not over. I think for Hadi, for you and me at least, this is something we're going to keep talking about. On our Slack channel, on Facebook, on wherever. This is a vital conversational topic, and whether we're doing it this year or next year or some other year, we're going to keep the fire going.
If I can just say, I hope I'm wrong. I mean, I really do. I mean, I came on the show. I know I made some strong comments, but I really think we as humans are just learning. And this is a journey for all of us. It's a challenging time. And I think we err on the side of caution for the sake of the community. But I also wouldn't fault the good folks at Lifetime for no matter the decision they make.
All right. We're going to make that the final word. Kevin, thanks so much for your considered and thoughtful and incredibly experienced perspectives on this.
Happy to be here. Thank you so much. It was fun.
Now we're going to take a moment for our sponsor, The Feed. And this is one promo you are definitely not going to want to hit that 30 seconds forward button to go forward fast. You know how Hadi and I and pretty much everyone on bikes has been raving about Morton products?
Yeah, not just you and me. A couple episodes ago, our friend and coach Jonathan Lee accidentally did the Feed's promo spot for us because he's such a huge fan of that product.
Yeah, it's everyone who's using their gels or drink mixes turns out to be a fan. It's just really great stuff. But usually, and it's not a knock, it's a quality product, but it's expensive, right? But right now, starting the day this episode comes out, The Feed is having a buy one, get one sale on all Morton products.
Wow, there's not ever going to be a good deal as that on this product as there is right now. And it's only going to go on as long as The Feed has supply. So if you've held off on Morton because of price, or if you've been using it and need to restock your supplies, now is the time.
Yeah, basically half price Morton. It is a killer deal. So note that you cannot double dip on this deal, meaning you cannot use the 15% off code that our listeners usually get with this Morton deal, because that would be like you're paying 35%. And, they can't do that.
Right. But we will say, if you're going to pick up any Morton product this year, you should do it today at thefeed.com.
So Hadi, I want to say one final thing in this episode, because this is not the final word on this, as far as I'm concerned, at least. I really honestly want there to be a persuasive, informed counter argument, and I would love to do a show on that. If there's someone out there who can speak with authority and present a great opposing view, please reach out.
And time may hopefully be a counter argument of its own. At this point, most people who are still in the race have no truly good reason to defer or cancel. Maybe write it out. Hope for the best.
Yeah, things are changing fast. By June, we're definitely going to have more information and much different circumstances than we do right at this moment. Chances are by the time we get to that time frame, the right thing to do will hopefully be obvious. So in the meantime, keep training, keep positive, and no matter what decision you make or is made for you, stick to, make a great decision, make a good plan for yourself, and then stick to it. That's what both of us are going to do. And that's what the show is going to continue to be about, at least mostly.
Mm-hmm. But when there are serious topics, we're going to talk about them. And we hope you'll join us in this admittedly difficult conversation.
Yeah. And with that thought, let's go ahead and wrap up Season 3, Episode 7 of the Leadville Podcast, presented by Floyd's of Leadville. Take a moment, go give us a 5-star rating and review over at Apple Podcasts. And now more than ever, please support our sponsors. Let them know you appreciate them making this show happen.
Meanwhile, if you have ideas or questions for us, you can find a link to our Slack workspace over at our site, leadville100podcast.com.
Keep training. Thanks for listening. And fingers crossed, we will see you at the starting line.